Welcome back to the Marvel Movie Minute, a daily podcast in which we assemble to explore the films of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, 1 minute at a time. In this, our 6th season, we are looking at the Avengers. I'm Andy Nelson from the True Story FM Entertainment Podcast Network.
And I'm Pete Wright, and tonight, Widow has a swing-around stick, and Banner's got a Widow bike.
Today we're talking about minute 111, the 11st minute, which begins with Tony forgetting step 2 and ends with Bruce arriving on an old motorbike, as Pete said. Back on the show today, Eric Deutsch is in the house. Eric, hello.
Hello. Glad to be back after a long hiatus. When I was last here, the Cap and Iron Man and Thor were fighting amongst each other. Now they're fighting together.
Wow.
Oh, that's right. That was like the woodland fight, right?
Yes.
Oh,
woodland
so
creatures.
Much water under the bridge.
That's right. So much. Yes, indeed. Well, we are thrilled to have you back. We're going to be talking about this minute and the next one with you. And I know, as the first person picking minutes for this season, you had particular reasons for picking minutes. What specifically drew you to picking these 2 minutes?
The main reason is in tomorrow's minute. It's the "I'm always angry" line.
Yeah.
But I wanted this minute also because I wanted the lead-in to the "It's always angry" line. Bruce arriving on the motorcycle there in the last few seconds of this minute. Anyone watching this movie knows what his arrival on that motorcycle means, and we all can't wait to see what's going to happen.
Sure.
So I wanted to build up to the "I'm always angry" line as well.
Gotcha. Now, I do have a question for you, a little less specific to the characters and why you picked it, but you live in New York, right?
I do.
So as a New Yorker, I want to get your perspective on the Battle of New York.
Is this the airing of grievances segment of the show? I love this so much.
I am curious in a few perspectives. One, as it relates to the locations, do you feel like this is Bullet, where, you can watch the Battle of New York, but there's no way you could actually piece all this together in any realistic sense? Or do you feel like they actually do the kind of the mid-Manhattan justice as far as the way that they've kind of assembled everything right here around Grand Central Terminal?
I think there's a little bit of that horrible late 90s Godzilla movie thing going on here, where Godzilla kept conveniently not being seen because he kept running around the corners and somehow a 100-foot-tall monster was able to hide, which was completely ridiculous.
I forgot about that.
The geography of it is, it's densely packed. The buildings and the really tall buildings, I might add, in that part of Manhattan, that this kind of a battle would be very difficult to happen in real life. I mean, I think that they did the best they could. I don't think it's wholly unrealistic like that Godzilla movie. But so you gotta do a bit of suspension of disbelief when you're watching this scene as a New Yorker. But yeah, the geography, I mean, if you have this gigantic space alien half ship, whatever thing flying around, I know that they show it knocking down buildings but there is no way it's going to be able to maneuver those tight corners flying around. I mean, cars can't take the corners that tight when you're driving in Manhattan, and this is a 65, 75, 85 foot long thing flying around.
Sure. It just did a U-turn, man. I'm sure it could do a U-turn in Manhattan.
It took out half the building, though. All right, here's my next question as it relates to New York. I'm always so curious watching a film like this coming after September 11th, and where you have like things happening to buildings in New York City. Do you feel like there is anything as this film relates to kind of that post 9/11 PTSD as like when you come into a film like this and you're seeing stuff like this happen?
Yeah, I've heard you talk about this on previous minutes this season. Yeah, I didn't have any of that feeling when I watched the movie for the first time. I do think that it is a little strange when movies these days do continue to choose New York as the city to destroy like it used to always be, pre-2001.
Mhm.
There are a lot of large cities in America that you could choose. It doesn't always have to be New York, but I thought that even before 2001,
Sure.
But, I mean, this movie, the comic books this movie is based on, the facts are 95% of the action in Marvel Comics takes place in New York City. So
Right.
to set the movie in New York City, at least the first one, because obviously Ultron takes place, the main battles are in Europe, and Infinity War is all over the place, and Endgame's all over the place. It's okay that it's New York because of what this movie is based on.
Yeah. I think that makes sense. And to your point, yeah, there is a lot of stuff that goes on in the comics in New York. And so there's probably something that makes sense with them doing it. But yeah, it is one of those things, like for me, like somebody who doesn't live in New York, and when you see these images again projected over and over again, it's like, gosh, I mean, yeah, as you were saying, it's like, does it always need to be New York? My last question just relates to kind of this franchise, and in the scope of battles that we're getting, like the Battle of New York. This is kind of our first big battle that we're getting with the team. In the scope of battles, does this feel like the epic big battle that you wanted to see in an Avengers film? And do you feel like it sets us up appropriately for future big Avengers battles?
Oh, yes, it did. In fact, when I first saw this movie and I walked out, my thoughts running through my head were, the last 20, 30 minutes of this movie are exactly what childhood me would have wanted from a comic. It was a comic book movie come to life. That it was a comic book battle come to life. It was the 6th issue of a 6-issue limited series come to life. The big battle that ends all the limited series in the comics.
That's an awesome reflection. That is actually that conjures up so much of my inner 9-year-old.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I definitely think that there's something about that. Like, they give all of the heroes their moments. They're all doing different things, and it allows for us to kind of craft this battle where each of them are going on their own little journeys as we go through it, and kind of each doing different things. And it makes for something that's kind of epic and fun as we see them kind of figuring out a plan over the course of this battle. Because it's a battle that has very many different chunks. It's, first, let's try to stop the Chitauri, and then it's like, well, let's figure out, we have to deal with Loki and the Hole, and then we're building up to kind of like the big final climactic, like stopping the missile and everything. And so it's interesting how it is in so many pieces.
Right.
We go so the start of this minute, it's Tony, and he is now leading the Leviathan up Park Avenue. We cut to Hawkeye and Black Widow fighting. I don't think that it's one of those things that you really would notice because it happens so quick. And again, it's, unless you actually live in New York and familiar with the area, you wouldn't know that Tony's just like 2 blocks away. But it is one of those things that now that I'm very familiar with all this area, I do notice, like, when we cut to them fighting, we should like right away see Tony and the Leviathan just flying overhead. And it's just one of those things I'm like, meh, it would be nice to have that moment there, but small thing. All right, so then let's hop down to see what Hawkeye and Black Widow are up to. The first thing that I noticed was that Hawkeye is using his bow not necessarily just as a bow and arrow, but also as a club, and his arrows as knives. And I thought it was pretty interesting. I mean, what do you think the way that we're kind of seeing the fight and the way that we see Hawkeye kind of integrating his tools into the way that he's battling here?
Well, I got 2 comments. One of them is it's nice to see Hawkeye and Black Widow not just holding their own, but putting a beat down on these aliens. The 2 unpowered Avengers are really kicking ass, and that's really nice to see. For Hawkeye specifically, I do have to call him out, though. He's got a really nice arrow twirl there that looks really cool. But if you're in a life and death battle with an alien, it's not efficient. You're wasting a couple of seconds to look cool with that arrow spin, I gotta say. You should have just jammed that in right away.
But don't we have the same problem with Black Widow and the whip around stick? Like, there's so much stuff that she's doing with that thing that's just balletic and martial arty, and really she just needs to go stabby stab on these guys.
Yes, that is true too.
I will say, as it comes to the way that Clint pulls the arrow out and then uses it to stab, the only reason that I could figure out why he does that, because it looks incredibly cool. You're right, it's a few seconds wasted. But I think it's because when he pulls the arrow out, I think it's facing the wrong way in his hand, and he has to like do a little baton twirl in his hand so that the pointy end is actually facing the Chitauri as opposed to the other way. And otherwise, I think he'd have to backhand it into the Chitauri.
Oh yeah, he definitely pulls it out backwards, but he gives it like 3 twirls before he slams it down. That's the problem.
Yeah,
he's going for some flair.
Flair. It's all about the flair.
Yeah.
He knows the job. It's like Office Space. You know, you got to have the flair. If you're going to be an Avenger, you got to bring the flair. We also get Black Widow's bite in this minute. You know, we've seen it operate. Now I'm losing track of all these minutes that we're recording out of order, and I honestly can't remember at this point if we've seen it in action before or if this is our first time seeing it in action, because we've talked about it before. I just can't remember. Regardless, Eric, Black Widow's bite. What do you think of this tool, this technique that we have for her?
I mean, it's cool. You know, it gives her a little bit of technology to at least enhance, so she's not entirely unpowered and has to rely solely on just her physical skills. So I like it. You know, Hawkeye gets to have the bow and arrows. She should get to have something as well.
Does it seem like she should be getting electrocuted herself when she's on something that is wearing metal armor?
Rubber suit. She's in the rubber suit. It's an insulated rubber suit.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's S.H.I.E.L.D. They've got such technology. Her right. Suit takes care of it. Yeah.
It was literally poured on her, that suit, and then it just kind of because of technology.
That's right. I do love that her method of like blasting it with her bite is she just puts her fist like up to the side of the Chitauri's head and blasts it. Like, that's like a brain blast. Like, that is just painful.
If you have the opportunity to brain blast, Andy, you take it. That's the thing. And that's actually the most frustrating thing about Black Widow's bite is that we see not enough brain blasts. I think even more than just as the joke, like, this is a largely underused tool of hers, you know, given how often Thor swings his hammer around and Cap uses his shield. Like, she uses guns, and that's just a little bit underwhelming. So I really like it whenever she pulls out this thing and actually starts using it. I'm finding my affinity with that tool is growing, and I kind of can't wait for it to be more.
Well, then here's the next question as it relates to Black Widow. Would you rather have seen her using that more, her Black Widow's bite, or the staff that she ends up getting from the Chitauri, and she now starts blasting them with their own staff? Like, does that already start diminishing the bite?
Yeah, well, that's the problem with the bite for me, right? It's that I like it. I'm conflicted because it seems wildly underpowered for what she is doing. Like, her central tool of sneaking around and electrocuting people is underpowered for a battle with an army of Chitauri. I guess that's my perspective.
So you're fine with her using the Chitauri staff because it's more on their level.
100%. I think it's fine for her to do that.
Yeah, and I mean that when we see her use it in this minute, she has to the one soldier she takes out, she has to do it several times. I mean, it takes a few seconds for it to take out. You know, the Chitauri weapon is just, you know, pew pew pew,
right,
and they're down. So it's a better weapon for the battle she's in at this exact moment.
And what we don't see in the movie is that her belt around her waist is just full of AA batteries. And so that takes some time to replace. Just a lot of battery swapping.
Oh, those things gotta use C's or D's. There's no way
He's rocking D batteries on her belt like an 80s boombox. I love it. I'm here for it.
Oh, that's fantastic. I was wondering how she does learn how to use this Chitauri staff so quickly. or if it's just like naturally intuitive. Like, I mean, it looks like the tip of it glows anyway. Like it looks like it has like an electric tip on the staff end that when you hit something with it, it shocks them. But then she does figure out like how to blast it, and that was the thing. I was like, well, I didn't know that they could do that because everyone else seems to just be hitting with it, and then suddenly she's blasting with it. And so that was one of those things. I'm like, oh, okay, she figured this out pretty quickly. I don't know. Maybe the Chitauri, the tool is simple enough for anybody to use. Maybe it's very obvious where the buttons are.
Well, the Chitauri are very basic.
Well, we're in a time where in the science fiction geek world, one of the biggest memes is somehow Palpatine has returned, right? So, somehow Black Widow has, figured out the Chitauri weapon.
Yes. I'm into that.
Yeah. What do you think, Eric, in films like action sequences like this where you get like dirt on the lens? This is a moment about 15 seconds into this when Natasha swings at one of the Chitauri that we get dirt on the lens, which kind of gives us that sense that we're here. Do you like that sense in film when it like does it feel like it's putting you there in the action? I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, sure. It's almost like 3D without actually the movie actually being 3D.
That's actually a good way to describe it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. We haven't really had a chance to chat with you since it has been such a long time since you've been here. What do you think of the Chitauri? Do you like the design of these characters and their use?
Yeah, they're fine. I mean, I didn't know who despite being an enormous comic book geek from the 80s, I didn't know who the Chitauri were. So I don't know if they came in after I stopped reading comics or anything about them. So, I mean, I was a bit disappointed when they announced the movie and I found out. I remember there were all the rumors of, is it going to be Skrulls? Is it going to be Annihilus and his people? And when I found out it was this alien race called the Chitauri, which I guess maybe is from Ultimate Universe, I don't really know. I was a bit disappointed that these big aliens that they were going to be fighting someone I didn't know for the first Avengers movie. The design is fine. I think that's pretty cool. They're cannon fodder. They obviously don't really serve much of a purpose other than just giving the Avengers this giant wave of foes to fight.
Yeah, I think that's largely my issue with them. Aside from the design, which always makes it kind of hard to figure out what I'm looking at with them. I can tell it's a creature.
Yeah, it is odd. The sort of biomechanical combo is a bit confusing to look at. Yeah.
Yeah, so that makes it a little tricky. I do think that they are interesting, but I do think that they end up feeling very much a device, an entire race essentially that is used just as needed when we need a large military force coming in.
Yeah.
But again, this, Andy, it leads off of something that we talked about yesterday, which was we need to have a foe that is easy enough for our individual 6 protagonists, our heroes, to kill a lot of easily, and for them to rise above the rank and file NYPD who are running around just now trying to figure out who to take orders from. And I think that's one of the things that the Chitauri do exceptionally well, is serve that role of being easy enough, but menacing enough too. And so it's useful. I think maybe I'm softening on the Chitauri, as dumb as I think some of the biomechanical stuff is to actually make sense of, like I struggle with. The big worm is awesome. And I love the fact that it's sort of like, what is it doing? Tethered, incubating, breeding Chitauri inside of it. It's so gross. Like there's some stuff to really celebrate about the Chitauri. And I think maybe I think they're okay.
Yeah, I mean,
they serve their purpose.
I've certainly seen a lot of them now watching it in this format.
God, there's so many. There are really so many.
There really
I mean, if I really had like one real legitimate like movie making complaint about the Chitauri, it's a minute that is in the future, so it's not a minute beyond, but just the way they are finally defeated, because we already saw that in the Phantom Menace. That's how the final battle kind of ends in the Phantom Menace. You take out the big ship, and because they're not robots, they are biological organisms. I felt a bit cheated by that aspect of it.
Yeah, it's very strange when that happens, when they all just drop. It's like, it's like, did it short out their brains? Like, it's weird. It's a weird thing. So we'll get to that for sure.
It's a great, tie into Phantom Menace. Like, you're right. It's, if it weren't in such close proximity, right, that it just feels It does feel a little played.
Yeah. There is an extended version of the viaduct fight that really is just more of watching Natasha and Clint battle all of these Chitauri. And if you watch this battle sequence as it plays in the film as it is, there are moments where we're not seeing some things happen. Like suddenly Natasha has this staff in her hand where she was just, blasting the guy with her Black Widow's bite. And so it does kind of flesh out the overall fight a little bit to kind of give us really the full sense from beginning to end of the fight all the way up through Cap and Thor and Bruce arriving. But I don't know. I mean, we all watched it. Do you feel like they cut the fight down to exactly what we needed? Do you feel like we needed anything? Were you missing any of that?
It would have been too long if they left it all in. I think that we get the point from this minute. We're seeing the street level Avengers hold their own, adding in, it was at least 30 seconds, right? Maybe even longer than that extended part.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So I think it would have just been a little too long. Be like, okay, they're punching more of them. Okay, they're shooting more of them. I think it would have been too long if they left it the entire length of the cut.
Yeah, I think that's really it. Like, as much as it is satisfying to watch as you say, our street level heroes like kick ass. Like, it's fun to see them actually do some damage to these guys. I absolutely see why they cut it. It's unnecessary.
Yeah, and it is a full minute, almost more than a minute of actual additional footage. So it goes on too long. I feel like we get everything we need out of this tightened version. And sure, there are some jump cuts as some things happen, but it's an action sequence. It's like, I don't think we need to necessarily see all of these pieces unfold exactly as it would have happened. I think it plays fine.
Yeah.
It is cool seeing that, since it's an unfinished minute, it is cool seeing the stunt people in the motion capture suit, because I remember some behind-the-scenes photos coming out when they were making the movie, showing Scarlett Johansson and Jeremy Renner filming this scene with these stunt doubles all in the suits. And I remember thinking, oh, this is going to be an epic scene, I bet. So it is cool to see that.
Yeah, no, very true, very true. Well, this does take us to the arrival of Captain America. He comes swinging in. Again, he had run off to go. It was when Clint was helping all the people off the bus, and Cap does his little tuck and roll off of the exploding car. And so it's been some fun stuff. And then, talking to the cops and everything. He has come back here to help these two. I feel like they probably would have been fine without him. But again, we are kind of in this place where I feel like we need our people kind of slowly kind of coming together. And this is essentially him coming in, I guess you could say, to check on them, to make sure everything's okay. And then, of course, everybody else kind of shows up. I mean, the way that Cap shows up, I mean, what do you think of him arriving this way and in his part of the fight?
Something I never thought of, Andy, until you just brought it up, that Cap shows up and then all the other Avengers are like, oh, team meeting. It just seems like we're all rushing to the central square to have a meeting.
Dad's here. Right. Time to talk.
Yeah, exactly. Bruce is going to be here soon. Don't worry, guys.
That is actually kind of funny when you put it that way, because I suppose that is exactly what happens here.
Yeah.
He's checking in, and then Thor comes down. He blasts all of the rest of the Chitauri with his lightning and comes down. Weirdly, this is one of those things that I don't, again, I never would have thought about this until I've just done so much research in everything going on in this particular location. But when it cuts to him coming down, like, Stark Tower is behind us. And he was just up there at the top of Stark Tower where he had been stabbed by his brother. Unless he had gone off to go do something else, which we never really see, it would have made more sense for the cameraman to just turn around and have him descending from Stark Tower where he was. I don't know why. It's just like, we want him coming from the heavens.
It's because the cameraman knows that Thor always takes a lap. Well, that's what we have learned in this movie, is Thor is always taking laps before he lands.
Yeah. Well, there will be more of that come a few minutes when he goes back up to the top of the Chrysler building. So just you wait. Just you wait.
Out loud.
I just like the foreshadowing aspect of this, that him coming down, blasting the Chitauri, and then landing a nice, which they didn't know, of course, when they were making this scene, but foreshadowing his awesome arrival in Infinity War in Wakanda.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah. I think it is interesting. He definitely seems notably weakened here. I'm assuming it's from the knife wound, although we never really get a good view of his stomach, and later it doesn't seem to be bothering him that much. But are you feeling like, because I was debating about this, like, do you feel like that is why he's weakened? And the only reason I ask is for the reason that he comes down from a different direction. I was wondering if there was also like perhaps an extended or some additional scene here that we just have never seen where he was off fighting as well. Or do you think that it's just meant to be the knife wound?
I think it's just the knife wound.
Yeah, I guess. It is just one of those weird things. And also, it's been such a long time since we actually were with Thor. Like, why did it take... Was he just up there, like, stitching himself? Like, I don't know.
Well, that's a good point. I mean, maybe that's it. Maybe he has been fighting and we don't... we just didn't get to see it. But the problem is the first thing he says is directly related to the beam device, that it's impenetrable, right? So it doesn't indicate, like, hey, I stopped by here on the way, I killed 400 Chitauri. Oh, by the way.
Yeah, it's right, because even Cap's comments are all very much about, like, what's he say? How's everything upstairs or whatever?
It's where we just saw him, so he's taking his time, is what we're saying. He's the least effective Avenger.
He was having a drink. He saw Tony's bar and said, you know what I need?
A pint.
They come in pints? Sorry, wrong franchise. All right, let's talk about the entrance of Bruce back into the fight. Eric, first question for you. Watching this, and when Hulk falls from the helicarrier and Thor falls from the helicarrier, and when we see where they've landed, have you always assumed that this was right across the bay in kind of the northern shore of New Jersey there? Like, are there fields and empty warehouses there?
Sure. Sure there are.
In this earth, why not?
There are. Yeah, I mean, it's funny, as we're recording this, I only recently listened to the minutes of, the helicarrier starting to go down and all the jokes you guys are making about, landing in New Jersey and, crashing and all that stuff. And so that's kind of fresh in my mind. And I mean, when I was watching the movie, I never really thought about, where Bruce actually is. Obviously, he's not within the confines of New York City in that giant abandoned building in a giant field, and of course, Thor certainly isn't either. But, I mean, not too far north of New York City and not too far west of the city in New Jersey. There's some grass and, there's some fields and things. So it's legitimate.
It's legitimate. Like, to get there from New York City, you got to drive a ways. But falling from, say, a helicarrier, I can imagine you landing someplace, just because of geometry.
Yeah, the physics of it all. You're ejected out of this fast-moving thing. You're on an arc at, an 82-degree descent, traveling at an acceleration of 84 miles per hour, whatever. You're traveling maybe 43.7 miles and you're landing there.
Exactly.
There you go.
And there you are in
11th grade physics teacher. There you go.
And suddenly Thor is in a grassy knoll in a corporate park surrounded by pharmaceutical companies. That's what we're missing.
That's right. I want to keep it in at the very southern shores of New Jersey. And what I really want to see is I want to see Bruce start riding the motorbike and then say, screw this is going to take too long. Turn into Hulk, pick up the motorbike, and bound all the way across New Jersey with just a few big jumps. Land there at just on the very south end of Manhattan. Go back to Bruce and then bike up like nothing's happened.
Right.
Well, if you wanted to be that far deep in Jersey, if you really wanted to get there fast, then he really just needs to commandeer a ferry. And he could have been in Manhattan really fast. Just skip all that I-95 New Jersey turnpike traffic. He'd be there much faster.
That's true.
I love it.
That actually does get to the thing that I think about constantly when I see this particular minute, as many times as I've kind of watched this last few seconds of this minute, is, goodness, there is so much debris behind Bruce. How did he ride that bike through the war zone? Right? Is that not a question I should be asking? I am just looking at cars on fire behind him, and all I can think about is that I don't know that bike would have gotten from there to here.
To their defense, they are trying to keep this to essentially, I think they said, like basically a 3-block radius. So it would only be from about where Tony just kind of, where the hot dog cart just got crushed a few blocks down, from about that point up would it be rubble and destruction. So it wasn't that, I would imagine he could go probably fairly quick up to this point. And honestly, probably against the flow of traffic. Everybody else is probably fleeing.
Yeah, right.
So
he's the only one coming in.
Yeah, he's the only one coming in at this point.
Yeah, he made it there the same way that Jeff Goldblum and Judd Hirsch make it to Washington, D.C. on Independence Day. You know,
outstanding. You're right. Again, physics. Like, you're right.
I wanted to ask you guys something. You mentioned about how they want to keep it to the 3-block radius, and right before Bruce shows up, Steve says this line. He says, "Loki's going to keep this fight focused on us, and that's what we need. Without him, these things could run wild." And so that line is strange to me for a couple of reasons. First of all, I don't know how Steve knows that these things will run wild without Loki. I'm not sure how he's picked that up. But also, why is Loki going to keep the fight focused on them? What is Loki's reasoning for not sending them all over New York and wreaking destruction? Why would he focus them solely on the 6 Avengers?
Yeah, and that's actually a great question. I think he figures that they're going to follow Loki because I think he kind of assumed that everything that's happening is under Loki's planning as far as the beam up to space, everything coming through. I'm assuming that, knowing that Loki wants to rule, having seen it all the way from Stuttgart and forward, I think that he's kind of assumed that this is the army that Loki is going to be using to invade. And so I guess that's how I've read that. As far as keeping it to this area, I mean, that's actually an interesting point. And I guess, I don't know, I guess it ends up, it's a point that becomes very weak when you do try to figure out how to defend it, because you can't really, because if they're killing everyone that's coming through, they're coming through fairly high. Just have them kind of, fan out and then drop down, and the Avengers aren't going to be able to, get them all.
I wonder how much of it that we're supposed to read from previous engagements between Loki and the Avengers is just what we've talked about before, which is hubris. Like that Loki feels, or at least I feel like we've been taught that Loki feels like the Avengers are the thing that stands in the way of his rule, as you say, and maybe keeping the battle focused on that allows him to, have a win and know that he's getting rid of, ideally, the things that the group that can stop him from taking over. I feel like that's how I have to headcanon it, because, otherwise it does feel a little bit empty. Is that a fair stab?
The more I think about it, like, there's probably an element of acknowledging the thing that they really want to stop is the blue beam, right? And they want to stop the Tesseract from blasting this hole into space.
Yeah.
If he starts fanning them out and they're all over the city, the Avengers would probably be more quick to realize we need to stop that beam. I mean, it takes them a good while in this film. Like, we're about to get to the point where they realize that we have to do something else. We can't just keep fighting. But I would imagine that if the Chitauri were so spread out in the city, I think the Avengers would come together much quicker and say...
And focus on the tower.
Yeah, and focus on the tower. The one thing that's there.
Okay, yeah, all right.
Yeah.
Phew!
Eric, oh, man, we dodged a bullet.
Convinced him.
Wow. God. We've done one. We tied off one loose end.
That's right.
Just one.
Oh, my God. 111 minutes. We finally got one shorn up. All right. I don't think we have anything else for this minute. Bruce arrives. We're going to finish that conversation tomorrow. Any last thoughts about anything in this minute, or should we close up shop?
I just want to say that it's a nice bit of movie making here when Bruce does arrive, that all of a sudden in the middle of this pandemonium, it suddenly gets incredibly quiet as he pulls in, so we can easily hear this conversation.
Eye of the storm.
Yeah. That is my favorite part of this whole moment here. When Cap is interrupted by this very puttery sound of this old motorcycle riding up to them. Very great. All right. Well, Eric, you've got a few of these Movies by Minutes podcasts that are all wrapped up and closed up out there for people to listen to. Tell everybody about what they are and where they should.
Yes. So please listen to Flash Gordon Minute, which is indeed completed. So you can listen to the whole thing out there. Escape from New York Minute, that's also completed. You can listen to that anywhere. And then still done recording, but still currently being posted. So an active show that is at this point about almost halfway done is as part of a podcast that's called It's Time to Rewind with Bubba Wheat, a co-host on covering the movie Memento, one scene at a time. All three of these shows are available in all your favorite podcatchers.
Check all those out, everybody. We'll have the links in the show notes. That's it for today. We'll be back again with Eric tomorrow. So, Pete, thanks as always.
Oh, tomorrow, Andy, a really fantastic display of green male vulnerability.
Until next time, true believers.
Marvel Movie Minute is a production of True Story FM, engineering by Andy Nelson. This season's music is Message to the World by Anthony Vega, and this season's show art is by Winston Yabo. Find the show at truestory.fm. If your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, please consider doing that for our show.